John Woo set out to make a film that could be set in any city, anywhere in the world. He was inspired by such international thrillers such as Jean-Pierre Melville's classic Le Samurai, starring Alain Delon, and by the 1964 Japanese Chanbura film Gyangu 9, starring Ken Takakura. It was to tell the story of a noble hitman seeking revenge and redemption in a changing world. In Chinese, the title is Di Pu Cheng Hong, which means flowing blood, two heroes, or bloodshed of two heroes. In English, it's known simply as The Killer. Let's have a look at where it's shot. The film opens with Chow Yun-fat's character carrying out a hit in a nightclub here in Lan Kwai Fong. He ends up accidentally blinding Sally Yip's character and becomes her protector. In one shot, Chow Yun-fat watches Sally Yip from here, giving him the perfect opportunity to come to her rescue later on in the scene.
Please help!
Bastard!
We see the signs for Mad Dogs, which has since closed down, and for the 50s, which has since moved locations. But this is a spot that Sally Yip's character gets assaulted and Chow comes to the rescue. As an alternative though, John Woo did shoot another scene with Danny Lee coming to the rescue instead.
Hey!
The scene where tough guy Danny Lee is chasing the gunman happens right here in Causeway Bay, one of the busiest parts of town in Hong Kong. Now, Danny Lee was actually trained as a police officer, and he went on to play a police officer in many films after this. So as much as this area has changed, you can still see some of the landmarks, specifically the yellow and purple sign for Dai Wu Restaurant, and for the orange and yellow sign that says Bak Fa Yao. It's a type of healing oil, great for those kung fu moves. I've got a train to catch. To shoot the scene on the tram. Residents thought that it was a real gunfight, called the police, and Danny Lee had to speak to the superintendent himself so that they could start filming again.
Hey! Freeze!
Chow Yun-fat's character executes what he hopes is going to be his last hit from a speedboat during the International Dragon Boat Festival. Now, the Dragon Boat Festival, it takes place on the 5th day of the 5th month during the Chinese calendar. And back in 1989, that was in June, 5 months before production was set to start on The Killer. So what ended up happening was they shot the footage from the festival back in June, then they shot the actors in November and combined the two to complete the scene. Originally, the boats were meant to be overturned in the ensuing chase, but the owners were superstitious and thought this might bring bad luck. And you know, maybe they were right. Maybe it brought some good luck, because John Woo went on to have an illustrious career in Hollywood, and the target in the scene, actor Yip Wing Cho, went on to make numerous movies with Sammo Hung. This is the site for the old Kai Tak Airport, from which Chow tries to fly to Texas with Sally Yip. Now, it's called the Kai Tak Airport because it was built by Mr. Kai and Mr. Tak. And the reason why they choose Texas is because producer Choi Hark had attended the University of Texas. In the scene, the police, they're outwitted by Chow's handler, played by Chu Kong. In real life, Chu had already entered semi-retirement, but came back as a favor to his friend Chow Yun-fat. Chow's house is located here at the end of Horizon Drive in Stanley on Hong Kong Island. It provides a setting for a classic action sequence. had wanted to shoot in a house on the beach, but those don't really exist in Hong Kong. So instead, he had to settle for a house perched on a cliff overlooking the glorious ocean. The scene took 28 days to shoot and 20,000 rounds of ammunition. Totally worth it. To see goons in white overalls being thrown through the air is a memorable highlight that has been revisited in many films since. Chow's home in the film is located in an apartment here in Seungwon. They had to find one that was big enough to lay down the camera tracks. It's the setting for a groundbreaking scene because Danny Lee walks in the footsteps of the killer, a scene that John Woo later reprises in Hard Boiled.
Hey, Eagle, you hit the nail on the head. You were right. Jesus, that's a hell of a greeting.
The interior of the church seen in The Killer is a set so they could blow it up. The only real church scene in the film is called Gaoyantong, Save Grace Church. Its exterior is seen in one shot from the killer's apartment. It also appears in another scene, but that was deleted from the final film. The final shootout was shot at a remote building made to look like a church. It took 36 days to complete and over 40,000 rounds of ammunition. Now, John Woo's a Christian, and some critics have commented on this aspect of the film. Chow's full character name is Jeff Chow, JC, same initials as Jesus Christ, and although it's a bit of a cliche now, the doves were used for the first time in this film. At the end of the film, John Woo blows up the statue of the Virgin Mary, indicating the final death of innocence. The Killer redefined cinematic gunplay and introduced John Woo to the world stage. Heroes firing double guns, bleeding stuntmen blasted off their feet, and of course, the white doves. We owe it all to this magnificent film. So, lock and load, lean back, and enjoy the ballistic beauty that is The Killer.